there is another important difference between the natural sciences and the social sciences. And Karl Popper, in this respect, talks about the degree of determination of theories. And he uses a metaphor. On the one hand, one side of a continuum, he talks about clocks. These are very highly deterministic, mechanical kinds of relationships where you can predict with a high degree of precision everything happening. At the other extreme in this respect are clouds. These are intangible objects. If you try to grasp something in a cloud, you don't have anything in your hand. And so along this continuum of clocks on the one hand and clouds on the other are the social sciences located. Most of the social sciences are located somewhere in the middle. And there Popper speaks about a plastic matter, a malleable matter, which is changing over time. So as human beings, we are embedded in a social situation, we are embedded in a historical situation, and then this situation is changing continuously. So the state of affairs today is different, for example, from the state of affairs before the Second World War or before the First World War. The international situation has changed very much, and other aspects are continuously changing. So in this respect, we place our explanations in the middle of this continuum, what Robert Merton calls medium-range theorizing, which means that our explanations, our theories are bounded in time, in history, and in space, in certain locations, certain countries. And so we only can hope to achieve this medium-range theorizing because of this plastic matter of our discipline. And in this respect, we also distinguish between different kinds of theories. So-called naturalist theories are more to the clock side of this continuum, and they take, well, what they call the real world more or less for granted. At the other side of this continuum are placed constructivist theories. These explain the world in the sense that we construct it in our own minds through our concepts, our perceptions, and this is more to the cloud side of the social sciences. In between, again in that middle space, this medium-range theorizing are so-called realist theories. They take an intermediate position, accepting the real world as it is, but acknowledging the fact that we construct it through our perceptions, through our concepts, our theoretical approaches at the same time. Statistical methods in the social sciences are also more on the clock side, not completely, but they are based on probabilities, on high expectations that certain things most probably, most likely are going to happen, whereas other approaches, other methods can only explain a more limited range, and again in the middle of this plastic matter we are talking about. So in a situation where we deal with a small number of cases, once more a small n, we only can distinguish certain what we call conditions of occurrence, limiting the probabilities of certain things to happen, and this is again placed in that middle range all along this continuum. And in my view, we have to accept the fact that in the social sciences there are no permanent or eternal laws like in some of the natural sciences. Even what is called Duverger's law, which stated that certain electoral systems, like a majoritarian first past the post electoral system, leads to a two-party system, like in Great Britain or in the United States, is a highly contextualized law, quote unquote, because if you apply this law in other societies, in other contexts, in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, where also they have, according to the British colonial tradition, some majoritarian electoral systems, but in an ethnically highly diverse society, this leads to a highly fragmented party system, contrary to what Duverger expected or wanted to explain. So also in our qualitative comparative analysis, QCA, we at best can establish certain covering conditions, but we cannot arrive at laws which cover the entire universe or which cover all periods in history. All this becomes even more complicated by the fact that we ourselves are part of the subject matter we are dealing with. As social scientists, we are living in a society. As political scientists, we are citizens of a particular country. And so we can interact in certain ways, whether we want it or not, with our subject matter. And so, for example, there is a possibility of so-called self-fulfilling or self-defeating prophecies. So if, for example, for the stock market or for currency exchange rate, a prominent person like Draghi as the head of the European Central Bank makes a statement about his expectations to what the level of the euro will be like the next day or during the following months, immediately there will be reactions on all stock markets referring to this statement. And so in this respect, what Draghi was mentioning becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If he hadn't said a word at that time, nothing immediately would have happened in this way. And so this complicates our relationship with our subject matter, but it also enables us to understand what is happening, because as human beings, we can emphasize with certain social situations, with certain research situations, and what Max Weber called Verstehen, a deeper human understanding, is also possible in this way. So there are advantages in the social sciences for such a deeper understanding, but also very important limitations. And so-called constructivist approaches in Foucault's sense can go deeper into such an understanding. And it is important to recognize that this is another very significant differentia specifica of the social sciences as compared to the natural sciences. And from all this follows that being part of our substance matter as social scientists, we also have a certain responsibility, a social and perhaps even political responsibility. We have to reflect about our insights and how they may affect the subject matter we are dealing with. So again, this is a very important difference.